Chapter 7 begins on page 54. There's a picture of some protists, and down at the bottom of page 54 you can see that this chapter we will be dealing with kingdom protista. You can see that there are 6 kingdoms down at the bottom, and so we're kind of systematically going through all of the kingdoms. We did kingdom archaea and kingdom bacteria in the last chapter, and this chapter is all about kingdom protista. On page 55 in blue it says protists, a microscopic menagerie. And then there's a quote from G.K. Chesterton, and it says, "Is ditch water dull? Naturalists with microscopes have told me that it teems with quiet fun." Turn your book to page 56. Protists, a microscopic menagerie. And as always, we're going to look at the major headings in our chapter before we read. On page 56 in blue letters, it says a microscopic menagerie. Middle of the page 56, it says taxonomy. On page 57, we have figure 7.3 up at the top that talks about classifications. Turn your book to page 58, and in blue letters towards the bottom, we have kingdom protista. On 59, we have in blue letters amoeba. Turn your book to page 60, and we have paramecium. Page 61 in blue letters it says euglena. And that's it for chapter 62, or for chapter 7. So let's read. Let's turn our books back to page 56 and let's begin reading under a microscopic menagerie. The kingdom archaea and the kingdom bacteria contain prokaryotes, organisms without a well-defined nucleus and without organelles. Prokaryotes are the simplest living things. Now we will investigate kingdom protista, a group of microbes that are the first eukaryotes in the current system of classification. As you know, eukaryotes are unlike prokaryotes in that they have organelles and they have nuclear membranes. You may see from Appendix 1 that the root word of protista is the Greek word proto, which means first. Thus, the first eukaryotes in our system of naming are called protists. All right, taxonomy on the bottom of page 56. Before we explore the microscopic world of kingdom protista, we must understand the worldwide system that is used to group or classify living things. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher who lived 350 years before Christ, gathered organisms from many parts of the world. He and his students tried to arrange the plants and animals into some kind of reasonable order. Aristotle is considered the founder of taxonomy. The Greek word for order is taxis. Theophrastus, one of Aristotle's interested students, based his writings about plants on detailed study and careful classifications. Almost 2,000 years later, John Ray, an English botanist, classified nearly all of the plants around Cambridge, England. Because of Ray's work, the word species came to mean one kind of organism. Building on John Ray's classification methods, Carolus Linnaeus developed the basis for the modern system of taxonomy. Just around the time when Linnaeus was studying living things, people began using a surname as well as a first name. Linnaeus decided, and a surname, by the way, is like a last name. So they had 2 names at that point, a first name and a last name. Linnaeus decided to, top of page 57, Linnaeus decided to do the same thing for plants and animals, and to use 2 names for each different kind of organism. This 2-name system of naming is called binomial nomenclature. In 1735, Linnaeus published a book, Systemae Naturae, in which he named thousands of plants and animals. We still use most of those names today. The most important thing Linnaeus did was to use a 7-taxon system with Latin names. the last two of which are called the scientific name. The naming of organisms is important for many reasons, especially when we are trying to control diseases or pests or to preserve wildlife in our environment. Just think, with over 300,000 kinds of beetles, which are just one of the thousands of kinds of insects, there certainly could be confusion. Remember that any system of classification must separate well over 1 million known organisms. All these creatures, from the great dinosaurs to the tiny bacteria, are put into just 6 giant groups called kingdoms. A kingdom must be divided into smaller taxons called phyla, and the plural is phylum, or it is that which is plural for phylum. In this chapter on protist and the next chapter on fungi, we will not use the other 5 taxons. For our work on plants and animals, however, we will need to know that each phylum is divided into classes, and each class into orders, and each order into families, and each family into genera, and each genus into species. Genera is the plural of genus, by the way. At the bottom of page 57, it says, for instance, the red oak is classified in Kingdom Plantae, phylum Tracheophyta, class Angiospermae, order Phagales, family Fagaceae, genus Quercus, and species Rubra. Thus, the red oak's scientific name is Quercus rubra. Turn to page 58 up at the top. The genus and species of an organism, which together make up its scientific name, are always underlined. The first letter of the genus name is capitalized. The species name is always in lowercase. Sometimes you may see Quercus sp, which indicates that there are several species referred to, but all of them are oaks. Perhaps a comparison will help you to understand how taxons work. Let our country be one of the kingdoms, then the states could be the phyla, this country would be the class, this town would be the order, your street would be the family, your home would be the genus, and your bedroom would be species taxon. You can use the mnemonic in figure 7.7 to memorize the taxon names in order. And in the email that I sent you, there are several different ones, but down here in 7.7 it says 6 of King Philip's classes ordered frozen grape sodas, but there are lots of different ways to remember the order of classification. Let's keep reading at the sort of the middle of page 58. How would you separate all living things from each other? Some creatures live on land, many can fly, a great number of organisms are herbivores, which are plant eaters. Shall we put everything found in the sky into the same group? That will put a housefly, a bat, and a blue jay all in the same taxon. The wings of each of those organisms are actually very different from each other's. A fly's wings are a thin membrane. The bat's a fold of furry skin, and a blue jay's is covered with feathers. These 3 organisms are very different. We cannot correctly group organisms by where they are found, nor by what they can do, nor even by what they can eat. Think back to how we divided the prokaryotes from all the other living things. They have no nuclear membrane and no real organelles. Scientists use the structure of organisms for classification. Using structure as the basis of taxonomy indicates that killer whales are more like us than they are like fish. We will see in the chapter on Kingdom Animalia why this is true. So just note, we base our classification on structure, not on what they do, not on where they live, not on what they eat. All right, bottom of page 58 in blue letters, Kingdom Protista. To belong to the varied Kingdom Protista, an organism must have a nuclear membrane and organelles. But wait, you have those. Are you a protist? No. There is one more characteristic of protists. Most of them are unicellular, or very, very simple multicellular organisms. Each cell of a protist does everything for itself, unlike in more complex organisms such as you, or a fly, or an oak, which have special cells for special jobs. Top of page 59. One simple way to classify the creatures in Kingdom Protista is to group them into plant-like, animal-like, and fungus-like protists. Based on the differences in their structures, protists are divided by scientists into many different phyla. You will not be required to memorize all the long names in figure 7.9, but you should be able to describe what all of the phyla in Kingdom Protista have in common, and that is organelles, a nuclear membrane, and a unicellular body. So what do all of the phyla have in common? They all have organelles, they all have a nuclear membrane, and they all have a unicellular body. Bottom of page 59, in blue letters, amoeba. A simple microorganism that has inspired many science fiction creatures is the amoeba. Actually, there are many species of the genus Amoeba. The name amoeba means no shape or changing shape. This protist uses a pseudopod for locomotion. An amoeba ingests its food by engulfing it. Its contractile vacuole is page 60, is a bubble-like organelle that squeezes excess water out of the amoeba. The amoeba reproduces through binary fission, splitting into two after making copies of the DNA in its nucleus. Middle of page 60 in blue letters, Paramecium. The Paramecium is one of the most complex protists. If you take some sediment from the bottom of a pond with some pond water, you may see both the amoeba and the Paramecium. Add some grass to the culture as well. The Paramecia will be on the bottom debris feeding on bacteria. The amoebas concentrate on the decaying grass. Figure 7.12 shows the slipper-like shape of the Paramecium. Its unicellular body is covered with tiny, short, hair-like structures called cilia, which it uses for locomotion. Unlike the ever-changing, shapeless amoeba, the Paramecium has a rather stiff layer supporting the cell membrane called a pellicle, which has an oral groove in it. This complex little creature has two nuclei in each cell. One is a macronucleus and the other is a micronucleus. The Paramecium contains star-like contractile vacuoles used to excrete life's waste products. The Paramecium often undergoes binary fission, which is splitting in two, or it may reproduce by conjugation. The micronucleus is needed during conjugation, which is a type of sexual reproduction. Top of page 61 in blue letters, it says Euglena. The Euglena is a protist that has both plant and animal characteristics. It contains both chloroplasts for making its own food and a gullet, like a stomach, for ingesting food. The Euglena also has an eye spot. It has a soft pellicle with spiral-shaped thicker parts. The most noticeable part of the Euglena is its one long flagellum, which it uses to move from place to place in response to stimuli. The Euglena produces by binary fission, and that means it splits in two, right? And that's it for chapter 7. Bye-bye.